Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Tonight, my interview is with Jordanna Eyre, and she'll be sharing a wonderful and interesting life story about the journey that has led her to her current job as a life coach and an entrepreneur. Now, that story will take us on a variety of twists and turns, going from social working to bartending, grad school, teaching, semi-professional salsa dancing, creating an art center, starting her own company, becoming a waitress, and then eventually ending her up in this career where she is helping people to live more exciting, more fulfilling, but more genuine lives and truly owning who they are to become the person that they really want to be deep down. Now, Jordanna may have some aspects of what she does that people might say it's more spiritual, it's more emotional, but Jordanna is not just a wonderful counselor on helping people deal with their emotional issues in life. She also is a serious entrepreneur and will share her story of how she was able to get a $2.83 million investment for a business that she was starting. Jordanna is going to share the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, how being ditched by a business partner for a huge project turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to her, and so much more. So tonight when you're listening in, you'll also get an offer to go to Jordanna's page and get a free consultation or a free test that she offers. She'll also be discussing her new Reclaiming the Sorcerer program, which you can find at reclaimingthesorcerer.com, that is all about helping you. If you believe that you have a bigger purpose than your physical body, if you believe that your importance and your message is bigger than anything that you can even begin to conceive right now, then this is a program that may be for you, because Jordanna is going to do personal coaching for you to help you. And quoting from her site, if you have that feeling that you're meant for something bigger and beyond your physical body, then this is for you. So if any of that interests you, if you're curious about developing and growing people from an emotional and spiritual standpoint, if you're curious about the hardcore, down to the brass tacks, entrepreneurial side of getting investments, of building your own business, or if you just want to find out about the amazing person that is Jordanna, you got to listen in. So as I always say, let's get the ball rolling and let me present you to Jordanna Eyre. Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Brian Drury with another episode of Overcoming Graduation for you. Tonight my guest is Jordanna Eyre, and she is going to be telling us about some really fantastic things that she's doing with her website and her coaching. Her website is called youarewhole.com, and Jordanna does what many people call life coaching, but has a slightly different perspective on what life coaching is than what you may have seen before. And just to take a literal quote off of her website, the focus is on the internal, and the external is simply used as a sign of where we can delve deeper and evidence of your growth. The core of the work remains in your ability to create the best life ever, and the coaching process is directed towards supporting you in finding your truth, identifying deeper patterns, living authentically on all levels, and reaching sustained wholeness, which can only come from within in order to affect what's on the outside. So, Jordanna, that's awesome. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Brian. Good quote. Who wrote that? I'm like, where'd that come from? That resonates.
Yeah, it's definitely not from your bio on your page. I actually just made that up, off the top of my head. Yeah.
Quite intuitive.
So how you doing tonight?
I am doing well, very well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I always the more I'm doing these interviews, it's just I have more and more fun, and I get to connect with people who are doing awesome things. I get to hear the story and get to share it with people. So this is just great for me. And for all the listeners out there, Jordanna has given me some feedback on what she'd like to talk about tonight, and there are some topics that I think, in terms of understanding yourself, the emotional challenges you can face in life, and particularly at graduation, are some things that she has some great insights to offer. So, but as always, we like to start with the story. So, Jordanna, I know so often when a college kid is on the point of graduation, they see their goal, what it is. They want to be a life coach, for example, but they don't even know where to begin because there's no classes on how to become a life coach. So how did you go from graduating college to living your passion and coaching and helping people develop their inner selves to become more complete, more happy, and just all around more fulfilled?
Okay, so it's funny. Every time I tell my story, I tell it differently. And part of that is because there's no classes on how to become human. And so my story is a lot about the fumbling of like, how the hell do I do this human thing? You know I have this power. I was born with a very deep internal knowing that I could do huge things with my life and serve a huge purpose on the planet. But nobody teaches us like how to get there, how to do it in ways that resonate, in ways that feel good, right? Like your dad might tell you as you're graduating, well, I can hook you up with this awesome MBA program I went to, or, I could get you a job in my law firm that I worked at, and I'm not knocking any of those things. In fact, if those feel like a calling for you, then do it. Please do it. But oftentimes, those aren't things that feel good to us, right? It's like we feel like in order to graduate and move out into the world, especially when it comes to making money with what we're doing every day, there's often a sense of, well, I'm just going to have to suck it up and do it anyway, right? So I was born with like knowing that I shouldn't, quote unquote, should not have to suck it up, and a big sense of power, but it was hard to link the two. So let's see, how far back should we go? We'll go so upon graduation from college, I did quite a bit of both knowing and heading on the path as well as fumbling. So I actually got out of college with a lot of internship already under my belt, a lot of work experience. So I was ready for a job right away.
And what did you study in school, just out of curiosity?
I studied essentially social services. I wanted to be a social worker, and there was no degree for it. I went to University of Oregon. There was no degree there. So I made up my own social services degree via studying sociology and Spanish.
Okay.
So I've since gone on, have a teaching credential, have a master's in broadcast journalism, and some other credentials. But that, again, a lot of that was also just further fumbling. So the first fumble I'll tell you guys about, I got my first social work job, and I was freaking blessed from the start. Like, I was given my own huge corner office. Here I was sitting in my corner office with business cards, and I was only like, maybe had just turned 21. And it felt really good. But nobody taught me how to deal with the burnout that one feels when they're working with all these deep emotions of the clients, right? Nobody taught me that many of us are actually empaths and absorb the emotions of others. Nobody taught me how to deal with, again, these things that we humans have to deal with. And so within just a few months into my first job, I was already, I had struggled with an eating disorder from a very young age. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse as I was getting out of college, which a lot of people notice. Like, you'll hear stories of other people after graduation and how the stuff they struggled with got worse because they're out on their own all of a sudden. And there's, again, just a lot of like, how do I deal with this? I have all these feelings. Nobody taught me how to deal with them. And it actually led to me it was a combination of quitting and firing my first job. And then I ended up becoming a bartender because I couldn't go back to work right away. Like, it didn't feel safe. And then I went to grad school, and I ultimately went right back into social services after grad school, became a bilingual teacher after that. So I had many a quote-unquote successful career, but each time there was a sense of fumbling because it was never what I really wanted to do.
Right.
And it was like what I made up I had to do because it was what seemed reachable. And even the concept of running my own business at such a young age, it didn't seem reachable because I hadn't seen anybody do it yet.
You're looking for the social proof in the world, looking for it's there was a quote I heard recently that said, don't look for proof in the world for what doesn't already exist. And it's one of those things where it's a lot easier to go, oh, well, I've seen somebody do it, which is part of the purposes of this show, is to introduce people to people that have and are doing it. But when you haven't seen it, it can be very challenging. So like you said, you're like, it's not even real in my mind yet.
Very challenging. And especially like if we backtrack, this is actually, if anybody who knows me may have already heard bits and pieces of this story, but if you backtrack to my very early childhood, I was taught from a young age, you can't do it. And it wasn't an intention of my parents. It was just the way society ran. Mm-hmm. Because the very first thing I wanted to be when I grew up was the Easter Bunny. So like talk about my dreams getting pushed down. Well, that's not possible, right? But again, I mean, who's to say it wouldn't have been possible? Like if there's somebody on this call who still wants to be the Easter Bunny, maybe there could be a real life version of that. We don't actually know for sure that it's impossible. And certainly since then, once I did discover that anything was possible, I have realized that, okay, maybe it's not exactly the Easter Bunny, but anything you want to do, if you really take a leap into it, you know, the phrase leap and the net will appear. It's become a little cliche, but it's very, very, very true. Mm-hmm. So you want to be the Easter Bunny? I don't care. Freaking jump off the cliff and the net's going to appear and somehow the universe is going to show you how to be the Easter Bunny.
Vishen Lakhiani talks about that, about just embrace, like, he talked about in his Envision Now speech. It was in Calgary, really, really great speech. But he goes, listen, guys, if you want to be, he's up in Canada, so he goes, if you want to be a maple syrup tester, I don't know if that's what you guys want, but if you want to be a maple syrup tester, you could be the best damn maple syrup tester in the world and make a lot of money and be truly happy doing what you do. So, you know, using those extreme examples like the Easter Bunny or a maple syrup tester, people laugh and they go, well, yeah, that's cool, but that's not what I want. It's like, the whole point is, you can do anything. When you look around at what people are doing for jobs, there are things that exist that people would never imagine were actually a full-time job. And it sounds, because it sounds like so much fun, or it just sounds like something they've never heard. And that's a big thing. Just because it's not a college major or a class in college doesn't mean it's not a real job that exists in the world.
Exactly. And that's actually what I did. So that's where my path of actually living on purpose and enjoying what I was doing, that's where it began. Mm-hmm. I was on the phone with my mom one day, and I had been struggling as a teacher, just feeling very trapped in my classroom and very trapped by the work. And I was getting accolades my first year of teaching, but it freaking sucked for me. And again, my addiction, my eating disorder was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I knew there had to be something else that I was meant for. And so I was on the phone with my mom one day, and at the time, I had gotten into semi-professional salsa dancing.
Wow.
And yeah, okay. It was really fun. And it's still, I still love to dance to this day.
You've got to teach me, because I've been wanting to learn salsa. I've taken like a class here and there, like with when I took Spanish, because I speak Spanish fluently too. So, classes in high school, college, and then like I took one or two after. But I want to learn to do it for fun, you know?
It's pretty amazing. If we were in the same city, I would say we'll go out dancing and I'll teach you. But when we're in the same city, after you've taken some classes, because you're going to be awesome, we'll go out.
Next time I'm in San Diego, which would be my first time.
So I am on the phone with my mom, and I'm like, she knows my story, right? She knows all I'm going through, and we start to get into the, well, if anything's possible, what is it conversation, and a light bulb just goes on, and I was like, I got it. I love dancing. I love the arts. Everything I did love as a teacher was the transformation element of what I was seeing in my students. Mm-hmm. I loved transformation. So I was like, I got it. I'm going to open an arts center where people use the arts to transform. And it became this ginormous business model. I took a leap. I quit my job. And I spent 6 months eating, sleeping, breathing a business plan. And what's interesting is, like, a lot of people, probably the next question will be, well, how did you do that? Like 6 months and you weren't working? Mm-hmm. Well, anything's possible, guys. I was a starving teacher. I barely could pay my own bills as a teacher. But the universe granted me with unemployment. Like, even though I quit, there were ways to work around it. And I'm not saying that I worked the system. In fact, it actually was quite smooth and legal the way it worked. but that's just an example. It may be unemployment. It may be some random gift. You never know where it'll come from. Mm-hmm. But I would never want somebody to think that finances are the obstacle to living the life of their dreams, because it's not. Right. Money is just an energy, the same as anything else.
And that's one of the biggest excuses that we'll find, is that I'll do it later. I'll do it when it's safe, when I have enough money to do it safely. But the thing is, that mentality won't get you there. Now, one thing I am curious about, did you at this point have student loans you were dealing with?
Wait, did I? I'm trying to remember. Yes, no, I did. That was after my master's degree.
Okay, so
I was trying to think of the trajectory. Oh, I had massive student loans.
Okay, that's even better for this show, because that's something that concept terrifies me, to be honest, of dropping everything and go, because I graduated with $80,000 in student loans. And, you hear a lot of speakers talking about just take the leap, just jump. And I think it's a scary thing. I think it's something that it's not right for everybody, but there's some people it's the perfect step for. So I think that's great. I think that's really a critical piece, because some people would have been like, oh, well, she had mommy and daddy taking care of her, or, oh, she didn't have loans, so it's fine. So the fact you had massive grad school student loans and you just said, I'm going to take the next 6 months and do this, and just take it for what it is, because that's where your happiness was guiding you.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And since then, quick fast forward, and then we'll get back to even what that is that we're talking about. But since then, it's been leap after leap, and I've never had anyone else support me. Mm-hmm. So that's just to give people that example. I mean, I now have a full team, people that work with me and for me. I live in an amazing apartment, and it's not to speak materially. It's more just that, I mean, I've seen the comparison of what other coaches make versus what I make, and there's a whole spectrum of it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's never like our ability to have what we want as well is never about the money. It's about how we want to feel. Right. And if we align how we want to feel with how we're living, then the money shows up always. And it's never about somebody needing somebody else to support you. It's always going to show up in the way that you need it to, without attachment, of course, right? Like if we're very attached to it, it must show up in this particular way. That can be a little stifling, and it doesn't always show up. Right. But when we open ourselves to, I don't know how, but it will, so I'm going to take this leap and live in this way, it does always show up.
And what's really interesting about that, and I can tell you honestly, like until I started reading personal development stuff, watching more TED Talks, watching videos from Awesomeness Fest, this stuff all sounded very scary to me, or very the new age woo-woo, like just believe in it'll come. And I think a lot of the listeners will be experiencing a similar feeling of, well, how do you just get in that state, or how do you do these things and just feel it and it comes? But through just my own research and trying things out, I found that little changes and just experimenting with certain things on mentality, on feeling, it's amazing how much control you have that you don't recognize until you start experimenting. So for the listeners who are hearing this and going, ooh, well, maybe her, but not me, we all have that power within us, and it takes some experimenting. It's like any other muscle that you need to condition and strengthen, and then when you are able to wholly step into yourself and who you are, life is a lot more relaxing, life is a lot more fulfilling. You just suddenly start meeting the people you've been wanting to meet. And when she talks about money coming into your life, when you're just doing the things you love and believing there's going to be a way, you're not just sitting there not taking action. There's a big component that you're taking steps. Like even when she didn't know where she was going or what was next, she's building a business plan, she's reaching out, she's connecting. So belief is huge, and action, in my mind, is another huge piece. Would you agree with that, Jordanna?
150%. Okay. And to speak back to what you were saying, that you're right, that not everyone's going to have the same tools, but what is important, and you also said this, Brian, what is important is that everyone already has an internal sense of knowing, and to start with what you already have.
Yeah.
So everyone that's listening right now has access to something that they're already really good at. And whether it's like a specific talent or gift or just something they already know within them, to keep using that as the internal guidance system. Like my internal guidance system, there was a lot that I knew internally, but it took a lot of transformation and personal growth work to get the crud that was thrown on top of it by society, limiting beliefs, being pushed down, etc. But while I was digging that crud off, the one thing that kept me guided was that knowing that it was possible, and that knowing that I was powerful. And again, not everyone, I have clients who come to me and go, I don't feel like I'm powerful, but there's still always something they do know. And something internal, that like a little voice that keeps telling them something. And if you keep following that, that's still going to get you to the next little breadcrumb on the trail, and the next little breadcrumb, where then, and especially it helps, of course, if you have a great guide. But if you're not ready to spend money on a guide, or if you're not feeling ready to step up to the full, like, what's the word? Like being visible in front of a guide. If you're not ready for that, still keep following the internal knowing that you have, because that's what's going to prepare you for everything else you need.
And I'm really glad you brought up, so the mentor point or guide is something that is very consistent with the people that I've been interviewing on this show. Now, I remember when I first graduated, I started getting into this stuff. I barely had money to save, because I was putting so much towards my loans because I wanted to get them out of my life. And I kept reading or seeing in the videos that I watched, they said you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And they said find a mentor and make that person one of these people. And I kept getting frustrated because I was like, well, how can I meet them if I can't spend money? Or how can I meet these people who are doing these incredible things when they live in Malaysia or Taiwan or somewhere totally different? And then I heard Brian Johnson from Philosopher's Notes. He said, he was talking about his journey, and he said, I was surrounded by the most brilliant minds of the day every day for a year after he sold his company. And I think he lived in Bali for a year, which sounds phenomenal. But he built a company, sold it, and this was his time to spend his time with all these mentors. And they said, how did you do that? And he said, I read books. And that was kind of a huge light bulb for me, is that's mentorship right there. That these are people that are trying to give you insights and guidance that they have discovered in their life. And I never liked reading. In fact, I hated reading growing up. And the more I've started to do it, I'm getting better. I still have that like aversion to it, but there are ways, especially with the internet now, there's so many resources to get mentors. But to your point, getting a real mentor is even more critical because they can gear it specifically towards you. But if you can't afford it, there's other ways.
Excuse me, exactly. And there's a reason, a lot of us mentors, guides out there, we provide free stuff up the yin yang. And yes, it helps us build our email lists, and it does help for the paying people to come in the doors. But I know I can't speak for everyone who offers a free gift out there, but I at least do it because it's a way to give you stuff for free, so that if you're not ready, the proverbial you is still getting what they need. Because for me, it wasn't an integrity to be sending away all these people who couldn't afford my services until I felt that they were getting something from me.
Right.
So there's tons of stuff out there. I guess we'll go ahead and say where you can get something from me, and then we can keep going on with the story.
Yeah, please promote. Like I said, I love when people promote.
If you're wanting something from me, or if you find out by the end of the call you are, you can go to my website, which is You Are Whole. It's all spelled out, YOUAREWHOLE.com. And there's actually a test you can take on the homepage of my website called the Wholeness Factor Test. And it's just a really cool guide that I've created to help people define where they're at on their path. Because again, as I've already said, everybody already has all the answers, but it helps you to define, okay, how many of the answers do I know I have right now, so that while I'm seeking guidance, I know what trail to head down.
Okay, so it helps you kind of narrow your focus on what the key points should be for you.
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay.
like where you're at. Are you a total beginner? Are you a little more advanced in in your own transformation, but you still need to come from it with a beginner's mind? So there's a whole array of possibilities. And so I support people in getting there. But then, of course, once you take that, you get lots of goodies from me. And I actually email people. You get video after video on all of the different wholeness factors that I've defined. So the different things that put together support us in creating a life where we feel completely whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And for the listeners as well, so to Jordanna's point, it's like when you get these free resources, this is the coach reaching out to you, this is the mentor reaching out to share their message and their outlook. A key thing there, not every coach is for you. Not every person out there is going to speak the message in a way that resonates with you or that will be the best for you. So it's important to don't assume you need to spend money on an expensive coach in order to get benefit. I've downloaded and gotten emails with a lot of these free resources and gotten incredible things from them. And I've also gotten a very clear idea of who are the people that resonate with me and that I want to follow more or invest in, and who are the ones that aren't the right fit. So don't assume that you need to take every bit of advice. Find the one that aligns with who you are, and it just feels right. It makes you happy, and then go with that.
Exactly. And that just comes right back to you have the internal knowing already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to be the same guidance system that you use. If you are looking for a guide or a mentor, that's going to be the same guidance system you use to choose who.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, Jordanna also does, she does counseling and coaching globally, all through Skype or through the internet. So if at the end of this call anyone is interested, we'll have Jordanna give her contact information, and then you can reach out for any of her programs, her services. But we still got to get through your story, young lady, so we got to keep going. All right.
So the rest of the story. Mm-hmm. So I will fast forward, and the quick ending of that first business was that it was successful in what it needed to be.
And this is the art center still, right?
The art center,
okay.
yeah. I actually I was looking for $2.3 million in investment. I was only 28 years old at the time.
Wow.
And please keep in mind, I've seen people do this at an even younger age.
Mm-hmm.
I was 28 because that was when I finally determined it was possible. But it is possible at any age. And I actually did find the investment, and I was moved up to the Bay Area from San Diego, where I was living, by my investors. And then the market crashed, and they lost the liquidity, so the money never went in. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, because I strongly believe that when it comes to living our purpose, each leap that we take is still getting us somewhere. And so, I mean, again, I like to use the analogy of the breadcrumbs on the trail, that when you pick up that next breadcrumb on the trail, you're still further along, and it's never about getting to a final destination. It's that with each one you follow that is your truth and your passion and your calling, you're increasing your level of fulfillment, and that's what matters. Mm-hmm. So even when I felt called to finally close down my first business, it was within knowing that it was the right thing. Right. And so I kept following the trail of breadcrumbs and following the trail, and ultimately what I discovered, and it was partially via people kind of pushing me into coaching, because people kept asking me for it before I even knew myself to be a coach. But at the same time, what I was noticing as I was just living my life was that what was important to me and what I found to be fun was growing, was working through my shit, for lack of better word. The more I did that, the more I was like, yes, I'm alive. And so I was led down that path of like, that's what I'm good at. I'm good at growth. I'm good at helping others work through their shit. Because the more I continue to do it for myself, the deeper I can bring others.
And to that point, because there have been, like recently in my life, lots of ups and downs, but the more I dug in and just started like I said to you before the call, a friend of mine said to me once, she's like, Brian, it's like you have no fucking clue what you're doing, but you keep doing. And that's been something that has helped me tremendously. And there have been times where I keep taking steps, even though I know what I want to do. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I just learn, I pick up each breadcrumb as I go. And I've been able to discover really cool things about myself and about the world and about perspective. And for the listeners, when you just try, when you take a step, when you experiment with something new, you're going to get affirmation. You're also going to have challenges. You're going to face things that confuse you or frustrate you. But my dad said the other day when I was having some technical difficulties and I couldn't fix the problem that day, he goes, maybe that was the growth today. That was the lesson. That was the learning. So when you start trying, you'll get affirmation, and this happiness and understanding grows. But it's a process, and it's not linear. It doesn't just keep getting better or keep getting worse. It's up and down like life.
Up and down, baby. I mean, I'll be totally honest. Like I have bouts of crying and working through more shit almost every day. And of course, I'm going to have it more than the average person because my path and what I do for a living is growth. Mm-hmm. So for me, it wouldn't be walking my talk if I weren't doing it just the same.
Right.
But for me, another huge part of my path was owning that my emotions were my truth. So just earlier today, for example, my boyfriend called about something that was purely logistical. Like, I need to know this about your schedule. And I started to get all frustrated. Like, honey, we covered this morning. Why are you wasting my time? And I realized it wasn't him, you know? So instead of making him wrong, I sat with it. And then he's like, babe, what's wrong? And I just burst into tears and I let it out. I was like, I'm not making you wrong. This is what I'm feeling right now. Mm-hmm. And I let it out, and he literally just sent me a little love note while he saw me on Skype recording this call. So it's really just to say that it doesn't get easier, like you said. It's not a linear process. But because I had that beautiful outburst with him earlier today, it opened up more space, and the work that I got done later today felt a lot more open and a lot more progressive in where I needed to be.
Yeah, and it's so critical to. I found when I'm really working on allowing my emotions, because we've talked about losing my mom recently, and then graduating college and switching locations. There's times where you feel alone or lost. There's a lot of emotions, and again, most colleges. I mean, I never saw a class about how to deal with the emotional stresses in life, and it becomes very difficult, but people ignore or don't even know about the power in just experiencing it, letting it go, and moving past it. I mean, I'm just as guilty as anybody of holding on to anger and frustration. You think about something from second grade that pissed you off, and you're angry all day about it, but then there are times in my life where I've kind of felt more at peace, and I've allowed the emotions to come and pass. And I haven't judged myself, which I learned was a big thing from the readings I've done, that judging yourself for feeling things is detrimental. It's just allowing it. It's okay. You move past it. It allows you to grow. It allows your creative energy to not be hindered. And to your point, you said it doesn't get easier, but what I've seen from talking with people and the things I've been trying in my life, it doesn't get easier, but you have more clarity and drive and excitement about it, because you understand the process isn't always easy, but the results and the things that you are able to share with the world as a result are so much more fulfilling.
Exactly. And the leaps you get to take become bigger.
Right.
So with each leap too, and the working through and the transformation that you're going to have to do with the next leap and the next one, you get to be taking bigger leaps. So it was like, the first time maybe a leap for you is, let's even give like an actual comparison instead of a real leap. So the first time is like I'm jumping off the diving board into the pool. Mm-hmm. And some people might go, no big deal, whatever, I've jumped off a million diving boards. But for you, it might be a big deal.
Right.
And then the next one, is that like free diving into the ocean. And then the next one might be skydiving out of a plane. So they do get bigger and better. But again, it's just the process of it doesn't get easier with the different leaps.
Right.
But it's more beautiful each time too. And while you were like free flowing in the leap that you just took, it's a lot easier to acknowledge what you've created and go, oh my God, my life is like way better than I could have ever pictured it to be many years ago.
And you're able to, you're able to create methods that make it easier to take the next leap, or to enjoy the leap more, to enjoy the ride. And I always bring this up, that I appreciate you sharing that there's ups and downs. There's times where you're crying. There's times where you're scared and uncertain, because I think far too often, I mean, I remember back in college, I looked at these people that had achieved what I defined as success and were doing great things in the world, and I was like, they must never be sad, and they must never have doubts. You know, they've just mastered themselves. But the more I've gotten to meet people that I look up to, that I want to emulate, I find the ones that really connect with me are the ones who are genuine and say, listen, we all feel the ups and downs. We've just found, ways, systems, processes or just we've gotten to know ourselves well enough to say, it's okay, I know I'm going to feel this, but it's not going to stop me.
Yep. Yeah.
So, okay.
And it's even knowing what that means, it's not going to stop me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I let myself, for me, just who I am, and I've seen this in a lot of people who feel things very deeply, when I need to process something, when I need to grow in a certain way, I have to sleep a lot sometimes. And I've had to learn not to make myself wrong for that. I'm 36 years old, and I still sleep 12 hours a night sometimes when I need to. But it also doesn't stop me. I know the difference between that and self-sabotage when I'm sleeping too much, right? So it's about learning the difference and learning what you really, really need and giving yourself every bit of what you actually need. And not making yourself wrong.
I must have been super introspective in college, because with the amount I slept, I should have had like 12 epiphanies a day. So. But, okay, so we're talking about leaps. We're talking about the next big one. So the Art Center turns out to not be the next step. What's the next big leap?
The next big leap, well, I mean, there were lots of mini leaps in between. What was the next big leap? I took a few different leaps in between. Like, I really just followed what was showing up and what my intuition said. So I actually moved home to Portland for a little while and got my finances back together, because I did make a few mistakes in there of like, oh, I could not pay that student loan for a while. That could be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Little things that ultimately weren't. But again, I learned it was all in my perception.
Right.
I'm always able to pay what I believe I can, and I just didn't think it was important momentarily.
Mm-hmm.
So I made lots of little transitions, and with each one I just kept following the path, and it led me into coaching. Via some self-development work I was doing, and again, just following all of the signs that were showing up. And my first coaching business was actually with a business partner. So I was in San Francisco at the time. She was in Los Angeles, and we opened a business together, and we pursued it with a huge passion. And I decided to move down to LA so we could do that together. We just were building more of a market and an audience in LA. So I moved down there, and about 2 weeks after I moved, she pulled out of the business and left me all alone in it.
Wow.
And that was a huge sort of revelation. And it turned out to be one of the best things she could have done. And at the time, I was scared, and I didn't want to do it alone, so I didn't do it alone. Instead, I got a job. And it turned out that very job, which was following my intuition at the time. So I want people to know, to be clear, that, taking a leap can look a lot of different ways. And for me, how long ago was that even? I think that was 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 31 at the time. And so for me, being 30 or 31 and taking the leap to become a waitress was a big deal, because I had all this education. I had investors backing me in my previous company. Some of them were like big time investors too.
Right.
And so for me to sort of downsize and go, I'm going to be a waitress and still know that I'm enough was a big deal.
And so were you... So you got the waitress thing as a side job while you were starting to run this company that your friend left? Or did your friend leave and you guys weren't able to start the company that you planned?
It was sort of both. I thought it was a side job, but when she left, after a little bit of tinkering and deciding what I wanted to do with the company alone, I just couldn't, I wasn't compelled to move forward. And so I trusted that, and I just waitressed and learned what it was like to live on purpose without something that I called a purpose.
Wow, okay. That's very interesting.
So, yeah, it was a whole new way of viewing the concept of purpose, and I learned as a waitress, and I was working at Cafe Gratitude, so if anybody's familiar with that, I mean, that was a gift in and of itself, because Cafe Gratitude is a place of transformation, and so I was really able to just show up authentically every day and serve others and know that the joy I was bringing them was enough and was part of my purpose.
Right, and that, I think, is a huge, huge point that you just hit on, because before I started doing the personal development stuff, I had my first job out of school. It was about 6 months in, and I hit the Groundhog's Day thing, where I was just coming in, hammering out emails, and just going home, and that felt like that's all life was. And I remember saying to my parents, I'm like, I'm not doing anything that matters. I'm not impacting people. And then my parents talked to me a bit, and then I started reading things, and it became clear all of a sudden, like one day after watching another TED Talk, I was like, well, I can impact all the people around me every day, and I can impact the people that I connect with, even through email or through phone calls, because I can be the person that, this may not be what I'm passionate about, this may not be my calling, but I can use this to bring good into people's lives, even if that just means doing a damn good job on getting stuff out on time so somebody else's day is a little bit better. And that helped me to kind of justify in my mind why I was still doing it, because I was like, there is purpose here, I just had to find it.
Exactly. I've learned to find purpose in the most mundane things, but it's really like my personal belief is that until we can find purpose in just being, we actually can't draw in the larger sense of purpose, nor the money that comes with it. Because until we can recognize that we deserve the abundance that's waiting there for us just for being who we are, then we can't draw in the abundance that's also there for the next level of value we're ready to exchange with people.
And it's seeing the value in who we are now. It's finding joy in who we are, accepting who we are, and being able to see the blessings that exist right now. Because so many, entrepreneurs, people who are ambitious, people who are taking on lots of things, get trapped in the accomplishment mentality. And this is one of my biggest challenges is there's times where I don't enjoy the ride. And you realize you get there, you arrive at the goal, whatever. Let's say it's starting a podcast. And you're like, great, I did it. Okay, what next? And it immediately just, you don't reflect, you don't enjoy the moment and the ride. You just look to the next thing and you think accomplishing that next goal is going to bring you joy. When in reality, if you slow down and look around you, you can see that there is joy in everything. There's joy in the time that you have to yourself. There's joy in the time with friends. There's joy in all of it if you choose to find it. And I'm not saying it's easy to find, because trust me, I have been struggling ever since my mom's cancer diagnosis and she passed away. It's been the most emotionally volatile time in my life. Absolutely. There's days I'm just angry or sad for no reason. But I know these things, like you said about accepting your truth. I know these things in my heart, and I know they're there. I've experienced it before, and that a person has the ability to embrace them more. And I'm working on getting more clarity. It's one of those, I'm at the biggest emotional challenge in my life, and I'm working to grow. That's what I want the listeners to understand, is that these things I'm saying, I've heard, I've read, I've come to an understanding of through multiple sources. But it's not like, okay, I got it figured out because I read this one thing. And there's times where you think you'll never forget the lesson, and then all of a sudden something happens and it just totally throws you off track. So all of that is okay. Just be willing to keep pushing forward, because it's there for you. The happiness is there.
Exactly. And the happiness lies in the feelings. So, if I don't know what your experience is as you're processing the loss of your mom, Brian, but I have it that there can be ecstasy in even the deepest, darkest emotions. Like I talk about how challenging it is to be human, and it's because we're kind of straddling this line between, okay, so I'm learning this sense of spiritual awareness. Well, what's spiritual? Versus like, who am I just being? Well, you're being human. And as humans, it's actually a gift that we get to feel stuff. Like if you weren't on this planet, you can't be so sure. And it's, your beliefs can be your beliefs, and not trying to discount anyone else's beliefs. But my personal take is if we weren't here right now, we might not be able to, I couldn't pinch your arm and you feel it maybe. And I could lean over, if we were in the same room right now, I could lean over and pinch your arm and you might be a little pissed off. But what if that's actually a gift, that you get to feel that?
Yeah.
So if we look at our emotions the same way, and as we're processing, and I'm not telling people to, go be depressed for the next month and just let it be. But I am telling you, it's actually like a storm cloud. So it's quite unlikely if you truly are learning to be with it. And I do, again, that's where I believe a guide is really, really, really important. Because there are people that find themselves then stuck in the mud of depression for many months.
Right.
And that's where you need a guide, because what it means to really feel it, sometimes you need a guide to help you learn what that really, really means.
Right.
But once you're there and once you can do it, it's actually more like a storm cloud that opens up and the sun does eventually come out. But there can be ecstasy when it rains just as when the sun shines.
Oh, I love that. That's really cool. And I can tell you just from my own experience and for the listeners, losing my mom is by far and has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through. But my mom, she always said, simple pleasures are the best. She focused on the simple things, and she lived and embodied making a difference for every person you meet and just bringing joy and smiling. That's all people said about her. So do I want this? No. Would I give anything to change it? Yes. But at the same time, I recognize it's not going to change. My mom always told me, everything happens for a reason and God has the perfect plan. And regardless of your beliefs, just understanding that, or believing that there is purpose.
Brian?
Yeah.
Sorry, you broke up for a sec. I'm not sure if our listeners heard it that way or not.
Oh, from my end, it'll be all right. The
Cool.
recording's over here. So.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah, you got to hear the story too. But, I don't want it. And it's not like I reached a point I was like, no, it's okay. I'm nowhere near that right now. But what I have found is that there is a blessing in the struggle, because one of the biggest things I've come to realize is we bond very deeply with each other through our struggles. And I told my mom, I said to her, it's hard, it's still very hard to talk about, but when the doctors had told us that she was not going to make it, and she apologized to us and said, sorry guys, I tried, because she was trying to make it to my brother's wedding. We got some time to be with her and to make promises to her, and I promised her that I would do everything I could to live in the ways that she and my dad taught me, and to share my message with the world and do what I knew I was meant to. And so through that, I've been able to connect with people I never would have had a reason to connect with before, and to share with them about what's helped me. And sometimes it's not about me coaching and having all the answers for them, because it's not even close to that. It's sometimes just saying, listen, I know it sucks, and if you need to talk, let me know. And so for the listeners, it's I'm doing my best not to cry right now, but it's one of those things where to say there's a blessing in this is the hardest thing in the world to do, but I know that's what my mom would want, and I know she would see a blessing in it, and I'm doing my best to see it. And on the days where I'm sad, I try to feel it. On the days where I'm angry, I try to use that and just channel it and work out or put time in the podcast. And I'm trying to just use the emotions to continue to drive forward. But I know that was a long tangent, but I felt it was relevant to what you were saying. And I big thing in this podcast is about being genuine and being open.
Yeah.
And I want to be as real as I can. I want this podcast to be a growing and developing for me to continue to understand myself more and share myself more openly. So that's a big piece. And I want to continue to hear more about your story too, though, since we had a little tangent there.
Well, I actually want to stop you and just say
yeah.
that was beautiful.
Thank you.
And I want to sort of name something specifically for the men listening and as well for the women who love men. So whether it's a brother that you have or a boyfriend that you have, we have this story that, a lot in our society, a lot of people have a story that women can speak about their emotions. And I mean, it's still not accepted, right? Like, if a woman cried in a corporate workplace, it still might not be accepted today. Now,
right.
I'm working to change that because I still believe that it's our truth no matter what. But that said, it still is considered more acceptable for a woman than it is for a man.
Yep.
And it's actually not only bullshit, it's actually proven statistically that the leaders, like male leaders who are the most respected, are male leaders who've gotten emotional in front of people before. Mm-hmm. And it's because there's a different way to do it than when we think of like a man who becomes smaller when he gets emotional. That usually happens, like the physical reduction of size where he looks and seems wimpy, mm-hmm. is actually because that's a man who's not owning it, who doesn't know he's enough in the emotion he's having, versus what you just did. You owned it. You're like, this is mine, and it's okay, and it's coming out. And that is like true masculinity, truth, and being a man. And again, the emotion is no different for a man than it is for a woman. We feel it a little differently in our bodies, so the way we communicate it can be differently. But just to remind people that there is a beauty in it, whether you're a man or a woman, and to hold that respect for each other as we process our stuff.
That's awesome, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's and for the listeners. So I've worked almost 3 years now in corporate America in 2 different Fortune 500 companies, and I will tell you what you believe, what I believed coming out of school about how you need to act at work is complete bullshit. The idea of there's work me and there's real me. When you're at work, you're still living life. It's not like you pause life and then you come back to it. And what I found was I started to become work me and then real me. I would say things like, oh, we're going to leverage our assets, and blah. I would say business things, and I would say things that weren't me. And I just started to feel like I was losing a sense of myself. And it came right when I started studying all these materials. And finally, I just started to be more me. I started to be honest. I stopped saying, hey, how you doing? Oh, couldn't be better. Like, I stopped lying about, if I was having a bad day, I'd let people know. If I was having a great day, I'd let people know. I stopped, and I found that got me out of being on autopilot, but it also allowed me to connect with people in such a deep way, because I wasn't just saying the superficial surface shit. I was saying, guys, this sucks. My grandpa passed away, and I'm really struggling. And rather than just coming in and saying, oh, everything's hunky-dory, like I think society kind of wants us to believe that that's what corporate America is like. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you're just going to hide the emotions and prevent yourself from connecting. Being open, being real. I cried in front of my department when I was thanking them for participating in a video for my mom. And that allowed me to connect. But it was just like, in those moments, I was just feeling those emotions and allowing them to come. And it was liberating. It really was. I felt very freed by it, that I could be myself in an environment where we're told that you can't, that you have to put on a face and a mask. You have to squeeze into a box and be this person to get to where you want to go. And I've just found more and more that's total nonsense. So I love what you're saying there.
Yeah, I always use the analogy with people that somebody's got to get on the dance floor first. So, whether our listeners post-graduation end up running their own business or at a really super corporate company or a nonprofit or working for their parents, like whatever environment they end up in, and whether it appears conducive to their beliefs and their values or not, if you hold something to be true for yourself and you show up vulnerable in, hey, this is what's true for me, just standing strong in knowing that and knowing you're enough and what's true for you, you're getting on that dance floor. And even if people aren't out there dancing, they're going to see the beauty in who you are and how you're showing up, and they're going to start dancing with you.
I love that. I love that analogy, because you feeling free and being you liberates other people and allows them to do the same. Even if it's just when they're interacting with you, you get to see a whole nother side of a person and depth. And to build on this point even further, if for the listeners, I think many of you, like I did, had the perception that when you get out there, you have to know everything, right? You got to be perfect. You need to never ask a question and always have an answer. And the thing is, you're fresh out of school. You don't really know anything. I didn't even really understand what my job was before I got there, and it took a few months before I started to get a picture. One of the most empowering things you can do, and genuine things you can do, that is really hard to do, is say, I don't know, and be willing to open yourself up. Because if you're pretending, if you're trying to say, I've got it, yeah, of course, you're living in this lie, and there's this fear that you'll get found out. Whereas if you just say, I don't know, but I'd like to learn, or here's where I'm going to look to find it, people will see that as genuine. They'll see you as a person who's real, but also who's going to take the initiative and go learn it. Don't ever assume that you need to know everything or that you need to be the ultimate resource. That takes time, and it's okay to not know. Even if you're considered to be an expert, there are things experts don't know. But knowing where to look and knowing that you can find anything, that's hugely, hugely powerful.
It is. It is. And there's a lot to be said for, like, we get there together. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm actually launching a program just this week. It's called Reclaiming the Sorcerer. And sorcerer is a big word, right? Like, I am saying, let's take back the truth in our power. Let's take integrity and love and match it back up with power, so that power is no longer a bad word, right? We aren't walking all over each other with our power. We're loving each other with our power. So that's a big leap I'm taking by saying, let's reclaim this word sorcerer. Let's do it together. And I'm guiding people through a program. But just because I'm the leader doesn't mean that I'm perfect or that I won't stumble and fall. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a process of, we'll get wherever we want to go. We will get there together. And I don't personally believe in a hierarchy. I actually, like, for example, my online business manager, who runs a lot of the systems inside of my business, I'm 36 and she's 24. And she knows a lot more than I do about some things. And we enter sometimes into times where I'm struggling and she has to help me out just so much as I do for her. So it's really, my personal belief is that there's no such thing as more or less or right or wrong. We all come into this world with different talents, different gifts, and we get each other there together.
And that's a perfect example right there. So if the listeners heard what Jordanna just said, she is open to admit, listen, I don't know the things that her 24-year-old coworker does know. And by saying, I don't know, she opens herself up to new knowledge and experience, and probably learns way more than she ever would have had she been like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right, so Jordanna, we're coming up on time here. So
we are.
This has flown by. It's been a lot of fun, and we even had an appearance from Donna, the train outside. So for the listeners, it's almost every episode. I've named the train. It's Donna, and anytime Donna comes by, she's just going to make herself known. So can't fight her.
Just giving love, yeah.
Yeah, just spreading love her way. So I'd like to just get like a quick update on, you were at this point, we kind of left off where you were doing the waitress job, But when did you start your own company and start doing this coaching that you're now doing today? And how did that kind of come together?
So part of it was my taking leaps on my own. Like, okay, I really want to do this, so I'll start this website. But going all in and having my work that I do today, coaching, online programs, etc., be everything that I'm up to, and my entire, financial wherewithal as well, I was pushed into it. I actually moved back to San Diego from Los Angeles for romance. And as I moved for my boyfriend at the time, I assumed I would get another job and then just keep slowly working on my business. And that's not how it went down. And it was pretty interesting to watch because I was overqualified for so many jobs, but it just became more and more and more clear that that's not what I was meant to be doing. So I sort of let myself get pushed by the universe, and as I felt like I was getting pushed off the ledge, I finally hit the point where I was like, I get it. I'm being pushed off the ledge. I'm gonna just let myself get thrown off and not try to scramble for my life. And I let myself get pushed into my business being all I did. And from there, by just receiving that and accepting it, the clients started to show up, the opportunities started to show up, and my business very quickly got built.
That's fantastic. And so now you're coaching people all over the world, and for anybody who's got a computer and internet connection, and Jordanna has a lot of experience and things to offer, but for anyone who has the internet, it's a possibility for you to find your niche, to grow your skills and your talents and your offerings, and then start a business like this. It's totally possible with a webcam and a computer. So I'm curious if you know this off the top of your head, how many different countries have you worked with people from outside the U.S.?
Oh boy. If I had to take a guess, I would say 10 to 15, somewhere in there.
Wow. And how many years have you been doing this particular coaching?
This particular business, since 2000, a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, I've owned this particular business. I've been coaching for like 8 years now.
Okay.
Off and on, even as I started the art center, clients started to come to me. But this particular business I've owned for somewhere between 2 and 2.5 years.
Wow. And then you've got that many international clients. You're hitting these different countries, people in the U.S.
Yeah, when you just follow your passion, stuff shows up. And again, whether it shows up as your primary source of income or it shows up in a different way, just to trust that the timing is what's right. I've had a lot of clients come to me wanting to build their businesses. That's a big part of what I do now, is support people in taking those leaps into their own passions and sense of purpose. And some of them, it shows up right away when they lean into it.
Right.
And others, it takes longer, but there's always a sense of the timing being exactly what they need. So to really trust in that.
Mm-hmm. And Donna was just pissed there, man. She was screaming. But, I think it's such a huge point. The trusting in yourself, the knowing what it is will bring you joy. And so I think we're going to have to wrap it up. I love the conversation. I feel like we could talk for 4 hours on this, but I don't know if the listeners have that much free time. So, so the last question I always like to finish up with is, if you could go back and talk to yourself right at the point you graduated college, when you're uncertain, you're not really clear on what your direction or your purpose is, what would you say to yourself about how to get started and how to begin to understand your purpose on this planet?
Oh boy. It would be to never make yourself wrong. To never judge the things that you already do know you know. And to never let the fears that you have get in the way. Like there's a sense, just again, people often have this sense that they can't do it. Well, other people have, but I can't. Like you were talking about, people think, oh, well, that person must have had a sugar daddy or their parents support them or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Never make yourself wrong for exactly where you are on your path. or how you're desiring to show up in it. Because what feels good for you, what feels like fulfillment and what your desires are is exactly what's going to lead you to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
That is awesome. That is great. Okay, so now I'm sure many of the listeners are going to be wanting to come find out more about you. So we've talked about You Are Whole, all written out, youarewhole.com. What other places should people come or go to find out more about Jordanna Eyre?
So they can find me. My primary website is youarewhole.com. And they can, again, you can either, if you just want to get some more information and get on my email list and get some goodies, you can take the Wholeness Factor test on the homepage, or there will be a pop-up as you go to youarewhole.com where you can email me. You can even get a free consult if you're looking to explore coaching with me. Or if you just have questions to email me. You can also contact my team if you're thinking that working with me in some fashion, whether it's the Reclaiming the Sorcerer program, I've got some online programs that are do-it-yourself. So if you're trying to figure out what's right for you, you can also email either of the girls on my team at support@youarewhole.com.
Okay, great. And so for any of the listeners, if you're interested in getting involved in it was the What Sorcerer program?
ReclaimingTheSorcerer.com is where they can access the information for that program.
Okay, so if you're interested, definitely reach out to Jordanna and her team. You can ask and find out more information, and that'll be it. So as always, these links will all be up on the blog post when it gets put up on overcominggraduation.com. And Jordanna, thank you so much. This has been a really awesome time.
My pleasure. I just love what you're doing and what you're up to, Brian. So I'm really glad I could hop on and support.
Thank you so much. Well, you have a great rest of your night. Enjoy San Diego, because I'm sure the weather's probably perfect like always. And keep in touch, and we'll talk again soon, all right?
Sounds great. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.